So good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us this morning. So, I see Lisa May hopped on as well. So we have a great presentation coming up with in a few minutes here with the Dr. Martirano. I think that's how you say his name. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but I think you'll find a lot of information here with him that he will share with you. And I look forward to seeing you again when we have our next manager broker meeting, which we will go into and give you more information on that at the end. So I don't want to hold everybody up. I want to get into the meat of the meeting. So let me pass this on to Lisa May that way.
Well, thank you, Shirley. Yes, and thank you all for being here. I see that Dr. Martirano is connecting right now, so I'll just tap dance a little bit for you, and it'll be just fine. To start off, thank you all again. There were a couple of announcements and important dates that are coming up that we wanted to share with you. And I will just take a few legislative liberties here and announce the legislative ones first because I can. I know many of you are aware that HOCO by Design, our new general planning process, is going on in the county. And right now they're actually seeking feedback from county residents on the draft plan and concepts that they have been working on. So there are 2 virtual public input sessions that are left. They take place next week. So Monday, September 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. and Tuesday, September 14th from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. You can register for those and give feedback in real time as they take you through the plan, or they have a virtual survey up where you can answer questions. For instance, what type of housing do we want to see in the county for the next 30 years? What are your clients seeing? What are they needing but not finding? Since you all have a pulse, on the residents and the homeowners of Howard County, your feedback is really vital to this process. So we very much encourage you to attend. And then we have a few other events coming up here at HCAR. We have our summer shindig and expo that is coming up next week, also September the 15th from 3 to 7 p.m. We have a volunteer day coming up on October the 2nd. That is our Realtors Are Good Neighbors Volunteer Day. So October the 2nd from 9:30 to 1:30. And then finally, we have our annual Board of Directors installation and luncheon. That is coming up on October the 6th. And that will be from 10:15 to 2 p.m. And other staff members can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have information about all of these on our website. So, we hope to see all of your bright, shining faces at those events, now that we can sort of connect again. And I see Sarah has hopped on just in case she needs to correct me on anything. Are we good? Okay, great.
You did a great job.
All right. Well then, guys, with that, I don't think we'll waste any time. We'll kind of get right into that. So I'm going to introduce someone who doesn't really need much of an introduction. I believe we all know Dr. Martirano and his presence here in Howard County, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway. We'll brag on him a little bit. Dr. Michael Martirano is named superintendent for the Howard County Public School System in 2018 after serving as the interim superintendent since mid-2017. And prior to his appointment, he served as the West Virginia State Superintendent of Schools and spent 9 years as superintendent of the St. Mary's County Public Schools in Leonardtown. Probably more impressively, he has a lot of experience in the classroom, having spent 35 years as an educator at all levels of schooling, science teacher, principal, visiting professor at Johns Hopkins. And in addition to his many awards from organizations big and small, he also holds a doctorate in education from Nova Southeastern University and 2 Masters of Education degrees and a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Maryland. So On behalf of HCAR, please join me in giving a very warm welcome to our speaker today, Dr. Martirano.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me this morning. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the introduction for a man who needs no introduction in the presence I have in Howard County. We've sort of dominate that space as far as the educational arena. And I was listening as you were beginning your presentation before my introduction. Somebody who can work the word shindig into the early morning conversation, that's great. I just need the day to end with like hootenanny or something like that as well. So I'm always looking at words, and I'm really appreciative of that word this morning. Well, good morning, and thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Howard County Realtors Association and the individuals here today. And I know that you've submitted some questions for me to answer. Do you want me to just go through those? Or do you want to ask them? How would you like to proceed? Because I would like to have some interactive time with some questions if I could. And I don't know exactly how much time you have allotted. So if you just give me some parameters, because those who know me well know that I never sleep, and I take off full-fledged running in the morning. I've been up since 4:30 addressing lots of things this morning. And I just need to self-regulate because I love to talk and I continue to communicate for our system. So give me some guardrails right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll throw out a couple of questions, and then for our attendees, if you can put some additional questions in the chat, we'll, I have maybe 5 or 6 questions that were submitted in advance, and then any questions that come up during the presentation that you would like to ask of Dr. Martirano, we'll put those on at the end. And we have until 10 o'clock here today, but we know that your schedule is very busy, so we will take any time that you have to give us.
Okay,
How's
very
that?
good. I can't give you till 10, but probably about a half hour or so. And I have Mr. Lamont. I've asked him to join me as well, my Director of Community Outreach, who's with me all the time. And he'll help me see the questions that come in the chat room as well and keep me focused. So go ahead and begin. And I encourage all of you to ask questions because, and I appreciate all of your work, because you are a major player in our county, is how you market and communicate about us. And I know that oftentimes the question you receive is, tell us about the quality of the school system. I know that's front and center. So go ahead and begin, and I'll start off.
Sure. Well, I guess, we just thought that we would start right at the beginning. We're just into a new school year. And while it's not a normal school year, it is good to be back, in person. But we know that nationwide, schools are trying to prevent COVID transmission, trying to keep students safe. We've heard about bus driver shortages, restoring learning loss from the past year of virtual schools. So could you just give us an overview? How is Howard County Public Schools addressing, those concerns or others as we start the school year?
Well, many of you know me well and know me. It's intense work right now, right? It's intense work for all of us. I had somebody say to me the other day, I think they were complimenting, he said, it looked like our superintendent's got a little more gray during the pandemic, and the intensity of the work. And first of all, I want to start with some really positive comments about how we have fared during the pandemic. And let's remind ourselves, we're not out of it. We are not out of it. But let's all celebrate today that 57,600 students are back in school in Howard County. That is a Herculean effort with a lot of community support. And it's non-compromising from my vantage point of the leader of this school system to get our children back in school, as I've had to navigate all of the political agendas and concerns and the different polarizing concerns of which we've had to contend with as we've moved forward. But I've been very insistent that I wanted to return to normalized school as we keep children safe. So that is our goal, to keep our schools open, to have children return, and then mitigate from that process. So I want you to celebrate that as individuals in this group, that this is a big step. This is day 7, I believe, but who's counting? And as we continue to move forward, and it's a little bumpy. It's going to be a little bumpy, and I'm being very transparent. Things are not 100% level perfection, but I always celebrate with our positive, and then I'm going to talk about some of our challenges. From your vantage point, 2 major things have been announced recently, that the Forbes magazine has identified the Howard County Public School System as one of the top employers in the nation, the #1 employer #1 educational institutions in the state of Maryland, and was also the highest ranked of the 6 school systems recognized in the nation. So we are very proud of that. That's a major piece of accomplishment, and that's based upon our attention to diversity and inclusion and the level of support we provide our staff. And that recently came out. Also in the Baltimore Sun yesterday, you may have seen there was an article that was in the bottom of the online. It talked about the 50 states and the top school systems in each one of the 50 states in America. And Howard County was ranked the #1 public school system in the state of Maryland by an organization called Niche, and then was placed in the 50 top in the United States. So those are huge pieces for us as we look at then there's so many pieces of how we define quality. And then the piece that is my holy grail as superintendent, and should be everybody in this county, is our graduation rate. And our graduation rate during the pandemic, as well as then in the last 2 years, has gone up to 93.4%, which is one of the highest in the state of Maryland, but the highest of the largest school systems in the state of Maryland. And our goal is to make that 100%, right? No child, I can't sit here and go, it's 93%. You should ask the question, what about that 6, 7% that didn't make it? So we continue to look at that. And then the other variable that I want you to have as indicators of future for your profession, for our county's growth, is that our enrollment, and I'm going to be announcing some of this publicly soon as it becomes official, but our enrollment has bounced back nicely. Last year we were down about 12 to 1,500 students based upon COVID and individuals making some decisions. I'm happy to report unofficially that our numbers are now higher than they've ever been in the history of the school system right now. They have bounced back. They're higher than they were 2 years ago. They bounced back from the 1,500 drop from last year, and we're at about 57,650 students roughly, and I'll be communicating that publicly. And so that's helpful for all of you to frame how we're faring during this time and the confidence that our community has and the need to be back in school. And then the other leading indicator that I look at is my kindergarten registrations, right? That's going to define the next 13 years for that child's progression through the school system. And we're seeing, we were down by about 400 or 500 last year. That number has bounced back up, not to the highest level of where we were 2 years ago, but we're about 100 off from where we were 2 years ago. But encouraging news is this week after Labor Day, and we've had a very shortened week because of the 2 holidays of which we've had, a number of our parents with who have higher levels of poverty and mobility will make some decisions to register during this week because of leases and changing in terms of their own residential pieces. But generally speaking, I'm going into this school year with a lot of optimism, but with a lot of hard work and a lot of challenges. If you are parents in the system right now, fully transparent, we provide bus services for about 48,000 of our 57,000 students, and we are having an extreme bus driver shortage. If you know anybody who wants to be a bus driver, I'm going to possibly get my own CDL license and start driving a bus myself, quite frankly, because we're down about 95 bus drivers, and that means 95 routes. When I say bus drivers, that equates to the number of routes that are now not being fully serviced at the level of one single driver. And I've had to make adjustments internally in some of the work that I've done in West Virginia and Prince George's County and other places, which is sort of common, is the double runs, so that the bus driver comes in with one group of children, drops them off, and then goes and makes another run. That creates a level of complexities, but our schools have risen to the occasion. It has created some frustrations for parents who expect, things to be perfect, but we've asked for lots of grace and patience, and we're really working through those. That same thing travels down to the level of our cafeteria staff. All of our support staff across the board are challenged in the arena of shortages. So we've had to have central office staff go out and serve lunches. I've been out there several times to really have boots on the ground, to all hands on to make that happen. And we're continuing to take applications, but I can't compromise standards, right? Because they still have to go through the security clearance and the background checks and the quality, because I don't want to let people in the door and then need to complicate problems once they're here and get caught up in other series of issues. So But schools are running. We're very fortunate with our teachers. We have the majority of our teaching positions are filled, and I'm pleased about that. Of course, the arena that is causing me the most challenge, which is another national trend, is the shortage of students who have special education needs that need to be taken care of, students with disabilities. And so I'm down about 20 staff members there, but we've made adjustments. I've deployed my central office staff to handle that. I've allocated additional long-term substitutes, and we've allocated based upon the existing staff that we have within our schools. So we're covering it, but not without lots of additional support. The area that I'm most concerned about, as you've addressed already in the question, that's a very broad question, I'll come up for air in a minute, is the area of keeping our children safe. And if you are a parent and you're following all of my communications, first of all, I want to, if you know a nurse, one of our nurses, if you see a nurse, just thank them, just randomly send them a note if you want to do some random act of kindness. Our nurses are taxed to the highest level in addition to their current caseload of providing medical assistance to our children within our schools. The COVID expectations have just been exacerbated by the testing of which we're doing, the modifications, the quarantining rooms of which we have in place. And I'm providing some additional thought about how I can provide additional support to our schools in the area of health, because that's a main piece. And we've also tended to the issue of, that I've made masking a mandate in our county for our staff and our students regarding the vaccination status. And I firmly believe in the science. I'm a science teacher by trade, and I read these studies all the time. It's the whole old adage for me: an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I followed that clearly. Our children have risen to the occasion. It was sort of the beautiful ugly on the first day of school, the beautiful challenge, I should say. I'm standing in front of Wild Lake High School and watching the beauty of our children coming down from all angles of the school, right? I mean, it was just beautiful. But at the same time, they're all wearing masks. And you're going, something isn't right with this picture, but they're back in school. And one little girl came down and she saw me and she knows me. And she says, "Dr. Martirano, I don't have my mask." She pulled her t-shirt up over her mouth. And I said, "Sweetie, we'll get you a mask. We have them, plenty of them within our schools." Our children have risen to the occasion, because my partnership with our kiddos is, if you want to attend school and you want to go to your football games and homecomings and your after school activities, do your part. Our kids have a role in this too. Wear your masks. If you're of age, get vaccinated so that we can keep our schools open. And I've also mandated vaccinations for all of our staff, or they have to be tested. I'm happy to report that I have about 10,000 full-time and part-time staff members. And of the 8,000 individuals who are full-time, about 96% of them have submitted their verification that they've been vaccinated. That's huge for our county, right? A school system that has that high level. And I've received very little pushback from staff, because it is a condition of employment, and individuals know that we're trying to do our part in that arena. Ventilation is a major issue. I've taken that to the higher standards, and you may have seen the announcement last week where I have been authorized by the board to use our federal dollars, which we have about 45 million of, to purchase about 4,700 HEPA filters on top of the already high levels of air quality expectations we put in our schools. So each classroom will have an additional level of supports for air quality. So I can go on forever because there's so much in the complexities of it. I think that was a lot to whet the appetite. I'm going to stop, read my classroom, say I'm maybe overloading you this early in the morning, and let you continue, Lisa, continue to ask.
All right. Well, thank you. And you mentioned the great accomplishments and the high level of performance of Howard County Public Schools. And there has been an effort legislatively in the General Assembly to provide more resources to our public school systems in Maryland, both through the Build to Learn Act and now the recently reinstated Blueprint for Maryland's Future. What impacts do you think those would have on an already top tier school system like Howard County?
Well, I think have me back at another time where I can give you about an hour's overview just on the blueprint within itself. I'm very, very vocal about the blueprint. I think in theory, it's good. It's a 250-page piece of legislation that we have distilled down to our Cliff Note versions to about 17 pages of work that needs to be done that will define our work, shift our work over the next decade. So this is not the short haul. This is the long haul, and certain things have to be in place for that. But I'm meeting with our delegation at the end of the day today, and one of my concerns is it does penalize, or it does not, it's not fully enhancing for a county like Howard County that is defined as an affluent county that receives money above maintenance of effort. So I'm in the process of advocacy with our teachers union, with others, to talk to our county executive, our county council, our delegation to say, we need, in order for us to achieve these goals and based upon our funding, we need to have an infusion of dollars at the local level. And you know, there's lots of successes as far as, you know, the things that we've done financially, but we're a growing system. We're the fastest growing in the state. We have more students coming, and that's emblematic from our enrollment, of which I've been watching carefully, as I just shared with you, and the needs of our system overall. And, you know, many of you know, you've heard me speak about the healthcare deficit that I inherited, and through the judiciously use of dollars that we've been able to save during COVID, we've been able to eliminate the healthcare deficit. And that's a big deal, to put our system back on the financial footing which it deserves to be, use of taxpayer dollars. But this legislation is complex. It's got a lot of moving pieces, and we need to advocate for our local funding to be comparable to allow us to move forward. Just specifically, there's an expectation that the starting teacher salary will be at $60,000. Well, we're in the low 50s, and we still have room to go. But just when you think about that, I mean, I'm just come through some, you know, very contentious negotiations because the money, we're not flush with money. I mean, I have to run a system, I have to pay bills. 85% of that overall close to $1 billion budget goes to personnel and healthcare. And so, you know, in order for us to allocate a step for all of our teachers is about a $12 million infusion of additional dollars. You know, it all tracks based upon our algorithms of a 1% COLA, 2% COLA, and our step. And these are large amounts of money that if we don't balance our budget, then I'm not like the federal government where I can have a national debt in perpetuity. I have to balance the budget by law. So that creates some concerns for us, but within all of that, there's a lot of positive as we're moving forward to do that. The funding is the main piece. You did mention, and I appreciate you bringing up the Built to Learn Act. That will provide additional dollars, but that's the other side of the house. When with my operating budget and my capital budget, we have 3 major projects in place. If you want something to do in your time as you're driving through the county and showing houses and different things, tune into the Talbot Springs project. That has just come out of the sand overnight. We're replacing that school. So the existing school exists, and this brand new magnificent building is coming up out of the ground as we speak. That will add some additional seats for us to address our enrollment growth. If you ride by Hammond High School, long overdue in a systemic renovation, as well as then an expansion of the front. That project has been like gangbusters all through the pandemic, and that will add additional seats. And the big marquee event you probably can't see from the main roads is the 13th High School off of Mission Road, which will add an additional 1,600 seats for our capacity as we look at our APFO and our growth and all that. But I'm still not done. I mean, as soon as we get those done, I've got to worry about you know, an elementary school up in the Ellicott City area. And fortunately, we've been able to acquire land in the Turf Valley area. The southern part of the county is growing and bolstering in terms of the need for enrollment relief there. At the same time, I have schools, hard for you all to believe, you know, I've lived in Howard County a total of 25 years, and my children attended Limekiln. And as we were looking at our long-term capital budget, there was a need for a replacement of the HVAC system. I said, didn't we just build that school? And they said, yes, sir, 20 years ago. That's how quickly time goes. And the systemic renovations, like all of you in the real estate business understand, that if you build a new home, it's about that 15-year cycle, 15-year that everything starts breaking, right? Refrigerators and washer and dryers, et cetera. I think those manufacturers program them to do that, to keep the economy alive. But all that said, I editorialize on those kind of things. Same thing with the school. If I don't keep track and up to date of all the preventative maintenance and the systemic renovations that have been pushed out, creates challenges. So the Build to Act, the Build to Learn Act, and the Blueprint both work in tandem to provide further enhancements for our school system as we move forward. There you go, Lisa.
Well, thank you. And, since we started talking about building schools and capital costs, we mentioned the new general plan process as you were logging on, HOCO by Design. And, one of the features of that is talking about the population growth that Howard County is expecting over the next few decades and the need for additional housing options. But of course, that presents, that has ripple effects to the school system as well. So can you talk to us a little bit about HOCO by Design and that from the school's perspective and how you see that playing out?
Well, and I'm glad, that we have a seat at the table. Vicky Catronio, one of my board members, serves on that with some representatives from my staff. And we should not be an afterthought. The school system should not be an afterthought. It should be a forethought in all the planning by HOCO by Design. And we need to really tackle that issue to ensure that we have, and when you talk about adequate public facilities, that we have the land designated for schools, that we have the capital budget to support the schools in terms of our growth, and that when we're looking to build more development, have more development, the conversation about schools has to be front and center so that we're not finding ourselves in the precarious situation that I inherited, that we had overcrowded schools and under-enrolled schools, and we had to go through a very contentious redistricting process to begin balancing that out. So if we are thoughtful in terms of the establishment of communities and having the correct support, such as schools and fire stations and police and all the APFO concerns addressed, then that makes issues easier for us to deal with and manage in a more thoughtful, coherent way about our growth. But unfortunately, we're growing so fast, and I'm still trying to play catch up with some years of neglect in that arena, and it's still not fast enough. So all of you who are a part of that and can advocate for schools, because you hear it in the conversations. I have to maintain a level of class size in all of our schools. And that creates then the use of relocatables. I've got safety valves in there, but they're not always the optimal levels when I would like to see all of our children in brick and mortar schools. But it's an infusion of dollars. If you understood the amount of money that it costs to build an elementary school, $40 million, a high school, over $100 million. I mean, these are not cheap, in terms of investments. They're a lot of money, but we're growing and we need to provide that support so that we keep this high quality school system in all of that as well. So yes, that's a big one. Keep us alive and well on that. I've got people working on that on our behalf. And I get a little disappointed when some of this is not including the schools at the beginning of the conversation, and we're at the end of the conversation.
Yeah, and one of the things that they have discussed, during the HOCO by Design process is that we don't have a lot of land in the county that isn't already spoken for in one way, shape, or form. And obviously that has impacts on the school system finding those sites for additional schools. So some of the things that have come up in the conversation have been converting vacant commercial space to school facilities, or perhaps looking at new models of school design. What kind of conversations are taking place within Howard County Schools, either now or in the future, on those types of ideas?
Well, and part of that is to be very forward thinking. These last several years, we have just been all trying to survive and reinvent education. There's been a lot of opportunity to innovate, but you hit a lot of the major points as we move forward. Yes, land is extremely scarce for schools within Howard County. But we do have a site now in Turf Valley. We have a designated site for the 14th High School over in Elk Ridge. We have several sites that we have been designated down in the Columbia area. So there are some things that have occurred that have put me a little bit, I'm breathing a little easier in that arena, but not completely. We have to look to the future and create a more robust land bank. So that's one piece of it. The second piece that I brought to the board's attention is more bang for the buck. There is no research out there that says the quality of an education is diminished based upon the size of a school. You follow what I'm saying? There is lots of research that talks about class size within individual classrooms. So for example, if we have 2,000 additional students and each one of our elementary schools contains 500, has an enrollment for 500, that would be 4 schools, right? But if I increase that by a factor of 600 to 700, then I can build 3 schools at a smaller amount of money for the long term and create an innovative instructional program and have staffing patterns to support the larger school. So I'm trying to get the school board, which we're in those discussions now, to look at the increasing level of building larger schools, because we have relatively small schools in comparison to other schools within this in the state of Maryland and the United States. For example, if you go down Route 29 at Four Corners, Blair High School sits there. That has close to 3,000 students. Well, they're a very high quality school. Our largest school is around 2,000 in that arena. So if we build them with the right supports, that can save us money. The second thing that you talked about is looking at the commercial spaces. Those are hard at times for us because of all the variables that need to be considered as far as health and safety and accessibility. And at times when what's most valuable to us are those commercial sites that then have the land in optimal areas, and then they become tear downs for us to build back up. But we have one that is the bane of my existence. Many of you know I live downtown Columbia, and I love driving through Wild Lake as I work my way up to central office. And every day I look over and I see Faulkner Ridge. Okay, Faulkner Ridge sits there as an unused building right now. It's not a healthy building, but I'm trying to put that in motion to be innovative in an area that has great need for some of my students who have additional challenges, and to be innovative and to put programs in schools there that will assist my children achieving their goals educationally, but a different model. So those things are in motion, not to mention, P3 schools, public-private partnerships, and the commitments that need to be there. But those are just not, people think, well, the public will give us an infusion of dollars. I still have to work through the process of the state and have local funding to support that. So there's encouragement of things moving, but of course, with our level of impatience, it's not necessarily always moving as fast as we want. But we've made some major strides in the last year with the projects that are in existence, tackling some of the systemic maintenance issues, having some land in motion, looking at some alternative programs, and then beginning those conversations about school size for the future, because we have to do that.
Great. And since we're talking about construction, I'll go to one of the questions that we had in our chat. There has been some legislative effort to make schools more green, more energy efficient, like such that we had with the Climate Solutions Now Act in the last General Assembly session. But what sort of proactive efforts is Howard County looking at in terms of geothermal schools or solar or electric buses or any efforts like that you are undertaking on your own without the state mandates?
All of those are in motion, not to the high level of capacity. For example, our big focal point is how we handled Wild Lake Middle School, right? That is basically that is a zero sum school where we, don't have big energy bills. We're using solar energy there. And the focus on that, I have a group of delegates and legislators coming into our county from across the state of Maryland to look at how that can be replicated, and then how we can do that as well. Geothermal heating, whenever that can be utilized, we utilize that. We look at our LEED standards for handling everything that which we can to have the highest standard up front, and then anything of which then we can do internally. I have a whole group of individuals that we've developed a division of our organization called IEQ, Indoor Environmental Air Quality, that addresses the issues from efficiencies and mold abatement and concerns associated with all of that. So those are all in motion. I don't think they always get the attention of which they deserve, particularly in this last several years. But all of those are in the forefront of our planning and design of schools. And then as we do retrofitting of our schools, those considerations are taken into account, and everything that we can to eliminate, fossil fuels and things that create concern for the environment are forefront. And I have a responsibility to do that because we're training and teaching our kiddos how to be responsible citizens environmentally for the future. And don't get me caught up in the conversation today about climate change, but we need to have great conversation about that and what that means for all of us in the future. And that's going to start with how we handle this in terms of our children who are going to inherit these challenges as we move forward.
Great. And briefly from our home inspector, because this is what I expect her to do. Do those evaluations include mold and radon evaluations within the school?
Yeah, I would, James, maybe you can get the link for them. We have been very transparent regarding all of our testing of our chillers, our lead levels in our water. We had concerns with Legionella a few years last year, so we've added that to our checklist. The mold samplings and testing is designated on our IEQ website. And I believe, this is the only one I'm blocking on, I don't want to say, I know for a fact that we have conversations about radon. I don't know if that's reported on our website or not, but all of the things that are concerns for you are the same levels of concern for us. Even, in terms of ventilation and things that create things. I've put CO2 sensors in all of our cafeterias, as a way for also for us to address the air quality during COVID. So we're doing everything that we believe needs to be done and more to have a higher standard. We don't want to be compared to others. We want to be the standard that everybody else is compared to and go above and beyond. So radon, lead, Legionella, mold, all of those are conversations within the category of the staff of which I have who does that. So home inspector, whoever that was, I hope that meets your expectations. But any assistance you can provide me would be helpful too, of guidance.
Great, thank you. The pandemic altered education in the county. Yeah, it forced us all to pivot, innovate, whatever buzzword you want to throw in there for that. And I'm sure that you and the school system have some lessons about that, and ways that it may impact the delivery of education in the future. So what do you see the future of education or education delivery being in Howard County?
Well, and I'm glad you asked that question because if you think about those dark days of March of 2020, when we all sort of went underwater and we were trying to come back up and breathe again, I tried to stay focused in terms of the opportunities within this crisis that would help us for the long-term improvement of our school system. That's a very visionary approach. As other people were looking at it myopically, just in terms of survival, I tried to keep our focus on what needed to be done, but how would those decisions impact our long-term improvement of our school system? In case in point, some of you may have heard me talk when I first arrived as super a few years ago, that we were woefully undersupported in the area of technology. We talk about us being a #1 school system, but I couldn't say that because our technology was so far behind and abysmally undersupported that it needed a whole overhaul. Well, during COVID, we were able to use the dollars from the federal government and the savings to transform and advance our agenda, light warp speed from where we once were a few years ago to where we are now. So that transformation has allowed us to provide a Chromebook for every child, provide additional supports for us to prevent things such as malware and ransomware impacting our system, which is still a concern, for us. Providing additional staff to provide the supports necessary, and then beginning that model of being able to shift to a virtual level of delivery, and then using our Chromebooks as another tool that children are utilizing in the classroom, even as we're not addressing the COVID concerns. It's a way to be able to deliver open source information from a level of equity and access for every child, being able to provide that, but to have the relevant information in front of them at their fingertips, not dictating every day by the use of the Chromebook, but using that as a tool to provide the access. So I am so proud of those transformational efforts that have occurred, because that was taking me a lot of time to make some incremental change, where in essence, we've been able to really hurdle over that and utilize those dollars in a way for long-term gain. And that's now part of our culture. So that's another piece for all of you to be aware. Every child in Howard County has a Chromebook. We have the budget to support the need for replacements for the future, and then the additional supports that we've provided for our teachers in the classrooms as well around the technology. And we've increased, with our partnership with the county, our bandwidth support, because all of this takes, an infrastructure. The rings around our county only has so much level, but we have been able to increase this. So I am really enthusiastic about a lot of stuff, that, but this one is one of those other pieces that has transformed our school system and has propelled it way into the 21st century. So I am so happy about that one. That's a major one right there. And then how we have provided additional training and support to our teachers who were really much struggling. They didn't go to school to teach virtually, right? They went to be in person, and how they have transformed their ability and their skill base to be able to shift and pivot, to use that buzzword again. I'm just trying to work in the word shindig, in there as well. But to pivot in that way, that's been with a lot of intensity and training and professional support, and then allowing us to be more efficient by even having this meeting today virtually. I can, I think our principals appreciate it, but I have full access to our principals. I can, instead of saying, come over to central office and meet with me, I can say, hey, I just sent you a Zoom link, meet me for 10 minutes so I can convey this information. They don't have to leave their schools. They can be right there where they need to be, and I can get a message out to them. So there's so much in that arena, and we should all be thankful how we've used our money in a judicious way to advance that. And I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, I think it also shows the importance of reliable and affordable broadband for everyone, which has also been a giant push during the pandemic at the state and the federal levels, is to make sure that everyone can access these virtual tools for learning. So the last question that I had prepared is kind of a more general, 30,000-foot question, but during your term as superintendent, you have gone through a large redistricting process, which was, all of you might have heard something about it, but it was very emotionally charged and, contentious at times. And then you also went through a pandemic, which was also emotionally charged and kind of scary for some of us. So how did you get through those, and what lessons do you have on leading, during turbulent times?
Well, one of our colleagues, thank you for that question. That's reflective. One of our colleagues at a nonprofit in Howard County, I was having some conversations with them. They said, we were talking the other night, and I may have shared this story with you. We were talking the other night with a group of us, and they said, who would you least likely want to be during the pandemic as a county leader? And they said, and I'm going, who would that be? And they said, by far, Dr. Martirano, that was you, because of the intensity of the educational program, the impact, and the concerns that everybody had. And so I kind of thought about that and reflected on that. And it's been intense. Let me just be honest with you. It's been intense. But when you come from the position where everybody is chewing on all these issues online and social media, I have developed over the 17 years of being a superintendent, I just said 17 years total as superintendent, to depersonalize this, to focus on the work, what needs to be done for kids. These kind of jobs are not for the faint of heart. There are 12,000 superintendents in the United States, and the prediction with the organizations that I'm a part of is that there will be 6,000 individuals who over the last 2 years are transitioning out. They've had it. And it's not for the faint of heart. I counsel, mentor a group of superintendents, and they're challenged about can they keep up the work at this intensity. So I've had to provide supports to our staff to keep going in the sense of depersonalizing this, responding at a level of positivity, and addressing this from when people are concerned with us, they're usually fearful. And when you show some empathy and compassion, that's the best way to handle this. And then being able to make firm decisions, because you can't be wishy-washy in this climate. You have to be able to make firm decisions. So the resources such as I've been blessed with a relatively thick skin. I practice adaptable leadership, situational leadership, and then very personalized as far as communicating those issues. And I know people, these are polarizing issues: to mask, to not to mask, to vaccine, to not vaccine, virtual school versus in person. These have been tense times. But at the same time, we have work to do. The redistricting issue needed to be done. It had to be addressed. That can was kicked down the road too many times, and everybody has a different opinion about that, but it had to be addressed. And at the same time, we have to come to grips with how we want our schools to look regarding the resegregation of our schools. When you have schools that have a poverty rate of 70%, and then some schools that have less than 1%. Those are conversations that we have to have if we are true to our values as Howard Countyans, as a diverse school system and a diverse community. So recognizing the intensity of that, I get charged up by doing good work for kids and staying focused on that, and trying not to let any of this to be personalized at that level. So I appreciate that. And I've been blessed with lots of really good people who work with us. And all of you should at some point acknowledge the work of our principals and our teachers and our central office staff, who are unsung heroes, who've curated, who've reinvented, and have allowed the school system to continue to move forward, survive, and thrive during this pandemic. So I'm about as enthusiastic as you can come in the midst of this, and looking at additional challenges that are coming. And when they come, let's take them on. I mean, in the middle of it, who would have thought that, a hurricane was coming the first week of school? We have to be agile and nimble and prepared, and, address these issues and make good decisions, as the whole county's, on social media chewing about them. And I go, okay, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. We still got to keep kids safe and educate. And I understand that. So all is well here. And I love the work. I love my job, and I love our county, and I love our kiddos. And we should be very proud of that and do everything we can to keep it going.
Excellent. Well, thank you. If you have time for just one more quick question, you had Howard County and schools across the country had an infusion of money through the CARES Act and one-time funds sort of to deal with the pandemic. When those funds go away,
Yep.
Does that create any sort of difficulty for the school system? Will you be able to replace those funds? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody asks that question, you're really intimately involved in understanding those dollars and how they work. And I appreciate that question. It gives me an opportunity to go at a deeper level. Let's keep in mind that those dollars coming from ESSER 1, 2, and 3, and all the other monies of which we've received, total for Howard County Public School System to approximately $45 million. Now, they have a different life expectancy. Some of them go up to 2025. They don't all need to be spent in 1 year, but I can't create a situation where I have a funding cliff in 5 years when all those dollars go away. So I'm always talking to our financial staff about, and our budgeting staff about, avoiding those funding cliffs, and then using those dollars to take care of one-time pay issues such as Chromebooks. I mean, that was an infusion of about $10 million. Those are things, right? I can keep those. There'll be a replacement of those, but I can pay those, and I don't have I have some recurring costs, but they're not with that initial outlay. But if I were to purchase $10 million additional usage of $10 million to buy, all of that staff that would go with $10 million, that would create a long-term commitment, or I'd have to terminate a lot of individuals after that money goes away. So we're trying to avoid that. So things such as the Chromebooks and the HEPA filters, the one-time payments for the robust level of summer school, enhancements to our buses and our ventilation systems, the MERV filters of which we've put in place. I'm just rolling down a memory list of items of how we are using those dollars. And then I'm also looking at things such as I've got given direction this past week for the development and the curation of a proposal to add more nurses to our school system. Now that will have a recurring cost, but I have an immediate need right this second that I want to use those dollars to help me deal with this immediate concern in front of me, because if I don't have my nurses and the supports there, everything else falls apart for me within the schools. But we'll watch that judiciously. But the bottom line is I want you to be aware, I can't create a situation where I just came out of one concern regarding the healthcare deficit, and I don't want to create another concern by using these dollars, which creates a financial cliff, if I've used that term several times today, for us in the future. So we're monitoring that, we're adjusting our plan, and I'm very proud of how we've chosen to use those dollars in a way to support our students and teachers and what they have been designated for safety. You may have heard our governor, who was rather concerned last week about pointing the finger at other jurisdictions that still don't have air conditioning in their schools and things such as that. We are light years ahead, and we've used our dollars to address those concerns. So I hope that's answers that question, but that's a very salient question that needs to be addressed as we watch our dollars, which are taxpayer dollars.
Great. Well, I think maybe a parting question. Obviously, we at HCAR and you and the school system both believe that Howard County is fantastic, the best place to be anywhere. How can we work together? How can we work together to promote Howard County and the fantastic things that are going on in our school system?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think sometimes people adversely react to the term marketing because it has a negative connotation in some ways. But how we communicate is what the word I wanted to be able to say. Notice how I started this meeting by saying I come from our school system approach to the school system always from a position of optimism and strength. A lot of folk can then look at the negativity. Sure, are we perfect? No, we are the most imperfect system that you can think of when you have all the complexities, but we're always in a state of continuous improvement. But I want people to focus on the strengths of our community as we address the challenges. It's sort of that Lilliputian, we're all going to die syndrome. I accept and work with a lot of people, but I have a lot of concern, and my tolerance is not high for people who are always negative and want to focus on all those things. But there's a way to do that in the appropriate way, to talk factually about our school system. When I talked about the highlights of the Forbes magazine and niche and maintaining class sizes and our enrollment going up and the Chromebooks, those are major pieces that we can't take for granted, that my colleagues across the nation, not just the state of Maryland, are struggling with. And, I just sort of walk out of the room when people are talking about these, and I go, there goes Martirano, the land of rich and famous and all of that, and the affluence. But we have challenges, and we're addressing them from the equity point of view, from our poverty rates that are continuing to go up. And we're doing that in such a wonderful way as we look at our graduation rate and the wonderful things that are happening. So as you can help me with messaging our school system, the level of positive things that are happening, and then things such as the challenges, we are looking at those in a proactive way. I had to say to somebody recently who was pretty upset, I said, stop. We did not create the pandemic. We did not create it. I know everybody is frustrated, but we're doing more than the best we can to address the education of our schools. And that's what I'm most proud about, is how we've maintained such a good level of response during this by communications and still doing right by kids across that continuum of poverty and meeting the needs of all of our kids. That stuff is so heady. That's why I don't sleep. I mean, I can't sleep because there's too much excitement going on. I mean, when you're doing right by kids and you're in a county that supports that, it's a very synergistic thing. So we're in a zone right now. And again, I'm not trying to say everything is wonderful and perfect, because I leave here and I got 10 meetings where I'm going to be gritting my teeth all through it, of things that I got to drive my bulldozer to push forward on behalf of kids all day. So I would appreciate any time that I can engage with you to give you information, because lots of people listen to you. I hear it all the time. And, people are trying to formulate opinions. You can personally tell them that you have a rapport with a superintendent personally, and the conversations about the things that are happening in Howard County and how we're attacking these issues, because my optimism for the future of our kiddos is so great when we have the kind of supports that we have in Howard County. So thank you for that question, and just continue to support us in ways of which you can help by the communications with our community. I really appreciate it. And you all know me pretty well. I'm transparent. I'm never for a loss for words. I will talk to a wall if that's going to help, to get the message out. I mean, I couldn't get through Whole Foods the other night because I went from the produce to get yogurts to get wherever I was going to get my salsa. And I had 3 conversations. That's great. That's great. We love our community.
Great. Well, thank you again for your time this morning. I appreciate anyone who gets up at 4:30 in the morning willingly. So thank you. James, thank you. You dropped a lot of very good information in the chat for our attendees today. So thank you for being here as well. I did note that our chair, Diane Taylor, also was able to join us after a very busy morning herself. And our CEO, Jessica Coates, was here as well. So I would be very remiss if I did not mention those 2 individuals who help make events like these possible. So thank you so much. If there is anything else, I'm looking to Jessica, I'm looking to Shirley. I think, did we cover everything? Oh, Shirley's putting up her hand. So I'm gonna hand that over to Shirley.
So thank you, Dr. Martirano, for your words of wisdom, as always. We always look forward to talking with you and meeting with you, because we do want to partner with you, because the school systems and what we do is very important, and we work together hand in hand. And I wanted to share with everyone on here about what's coming up, the shindig. You can't see that, so I was trying to hold it up. This coming Wednesday, we're having a endless summer shindig, it is called, which has been mentioned earlier in the presentation here. It will be at the Howard County Fairground, and you get 2 tickets for $15, and you get we have a live band, we have a bar, we have networking, we're having Jimmy's seafood truck, we have another truck coming in with a dessert truck, we have a cornhole tournament, we have games, a silent auction, so we have vendors there. So really, we are encouraging everybody to come and join us. If you can get 10 tickets for $60, and give them out to your people in your office, your top producers, your friends, and invite them all. This should be really a big, big party. And it's not just for realtors, it's for everyone. It's just a party to end the summer and go into our new school year. So I just wanted to emphasize having the shindig and just let everyone know everything that we're going to be doing next. That's next Wednesday, and it is 3:30 to 7:30, I believe it is. It says 3 to 7 on the flyer, but I think it's 3:30 to 7:30. So everyone, hope to see you there. And thanks again. And thanks, Lisa May, for hosting our guest and being part of our presentation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you all.